Hi everyone, hope you guys are all having a great day today. Today's video, I'm going to cover BlackBerry stock because they had the share buyback announcement in terms of press release. I want to cover that. In terms of investor event that's coming up, I want to cover that as well. Institutions buying up shares, going to show some information as well. Going to cover some technicals, short positions, interests in terms of how much the stock is shorted. And then plus a quick reminder, Q1 earnings for fiscal year 2026 is expected to be on June 24th, 2025 in terms of the numbers being released and the conference call. This is just an estimated date. Typically about 2 weeks prior, they release a press release stating when the actual official date is and time. The reason the time is a little bit important this time around is because typically they release or have the conference call at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. But last earnings, we saw that they had at 8 a.m. If you want to be notified when the live stream is, or not live stream, but when the earnings is, which I almost always live stream it, consider following and subscribing to be notified when I do. Typically go over the numbers before the conference call as well. They release the numbers about 15 minutes prior to the conference call. So go over the numbers and then live stream the event as well in terms of conference call. And then in terms of an investor event that's coming up, that is for the CIBC Technology and Innovation Conference. That's going to be held on May 22nd, 2025 at 8 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be live streaming that as well. And then also before the earnings comes up for Q1, about a couple weeks prior, I'll be releasing a video on what you could expect for Q1 earnings. And then in terms of the press release for the share buyback, and then just one quick information also for that investor event on May 22nd, it's basically John Wall, Chief Operating Officer QNX, Head of Product Engineering and Services, will join CIBC for fireside chat for the investor event. And in terms of press release, just high level, and I'll get back to it. I just want to cover the other stuff too, because this one's pretty detailed and I want to go over it as well. But in terms of high level summary, BlackBerry announces normal course issuer bids share buyback program. This was on May 8th, 2025 at 8 a.m. And essentially it's to be able to buy roughly about, give or take, 28 million shares within a 1-year time frame. Will they buy for sure guaranteed? Not necessarily, but it opens the door to potentially, or being allowed to basically buying up shares, that many shares, which is representing approximately 4.7% of their outstanding public float as of close of May 5th, 2025. They could either buy, sell, or do nothing, essentially, of these, right? And in terms of the technical side, I'll cover it a little bit later. I just want to show the institutional side, short positions, and then technical, and then come back to this in terms of further details. So in terms of institutions, if you were in the know for BlackBerry stock, and essentially for the most part, you've heard that BlackRock has purchased recently additional shares of BlackBerry stock. Now, almost all these institutions, except for the BlackRock one, is within the 1 month time frame, except the BlackRock one was back on March 31st of 2025. So BlackRock Inc. reports 58.38% increase in ownership of BlackBerry Limited. On May 2nd, 2025, BlackRock filed a 13F HR form disclosing ownership of almost 3.7 million shares of BlackBerry Limited, valued at roughly almost at $14 million US. As of March 31st, 2025, the entity filed the previous 13HR on February 7, 2027, disclosing 2.3 million shares of BlackBerry, give or take, of BlackBerry Limited. This represents a change in shares of 58.38% during the quarter. Current value of the position is about $14 million US. So we've seen a substantial increase on BlackRock's side. By the way, given with these additional institutions buying BlackBerry stock, plus in terms of how I'm seeing the management move, delivering on their promises, so on and so forth, obviously you could argue the share price is not being reflected positively so far for the time being, but how everything's being trajected with the technicals, in my opinion, I think we're headed to the $5 price point soon in terms of the US share price. Now, be mindful though, I do own shares in the company, plus I'm not a professional, so please do your own due diligence and research before buying and selling. This is just me sharing my information and my viewpoint of the whole entire company. The technicals, in my opinion, is showing a strong upside, but we'll get to that soon. Just want to quickly show the other institutions buying up shares. Again, this is mainly within the 1 month time frame from today. So we have next is JP Morgan Chase. It acquires 480,000, a little bit more than 480,000, but shares of BlackBerry Limited. This was as of April 18th, 2025. Then we have 227,000 shares of BlackBerry, give or take, Limited, bought by Bison Capital Management LP. My bad for mispronouncing some of these. But also we have Schoenfield Strategic Advisory LLC purchasing new holdings in BlackBerry. I believe it was roughly about $600,000 to $700,000 US dollars, yeah, give or take, in terms of the share. Stifel Financial Corp acquires shares of 327,000, give or take, BlackBerry Limited. This was as of May 10th, 2025. Then Wells Fargo, this is a small purchase, but buys about 22,567 shares of BlackBerry Limited. This was back in May 5th, 2025. And then we have, as well as Geode Capital Management LLC boosts stock position in BlackBerry. I believe they increased to roughly about $600,000 to $700,000, give or take. Yeah, 650,000, give or take. And then there's that in terms of institutions. Now, I'm going to cover the technicals. I just want to quickly show you how much the stock is shorted before I cover the technicals as well. So in terms of how much is shorted, if you look at the US side, so ticker symbol BB, you could see it's shorted about, let me just minimize this for the time being. It's roughly about 5.3%. This is as of April 30th, 2025. And on the Canadian side, it's roughly about 1.3, I believe. Yeah. So on the Canadian side, ticker symbol BB.TO, you can see right about there. It's shorted about 1.3, 1.4%. As of April 30th as well. So if you combine that to, you're basically looking at almost 7% shorted. Now it's not extremely shorted territory, but I would still say it's somewhat decently shorted. The reason importance of that, again, as always, is if the stock rises up, whoever are shorting it, institutions or whatever, might be forced to close their positions, therefore buying the shares to close the positions, which obviously in terms of supply and demand, and then buying up shares, volume increase buying, then increases the share price, if that makes sense. Now, the reason why you're concerned if the stock is extremely shorted, and to be extremely shorted territory has to be above 20% shorted, is because the more it's shorted, the more probable chance of one person domino effect setting it up. For example, if everybody's shorting it hypothetically and one person triggers buying back shares and they increase a share price increase, therefore the share price increases from their purchases, then it might affect somebody else based off how much they're positioned in terms of margin, so on and so forth, to also that increase triggers them to buy and so forth, sets up a domino effect. But we're not quite there. I'm just covering the numbers overall. Now, in terms of trajectory, the reason why I'm stating that I think we're heading to the $5 price point is right now we're sitting at $3.81. We've seen volume increase lately. Plus, if you look at the one-year chart, this MACD line indicates if we're in a bearish or bullish movement. For the time being in the bullish movement, we just passed the 50-day moving average of the one-year chart, which is about $3.78. Now, obviously, we're hovering back and forth nonstop from it, but it looks like we bounced off it, in my opinion. Plus, you could argue this is going to be short-lived with the volume coming in more on the sell side recently, right? But if you go to the 5-year chart right about here, we are in the bearish movement, but it looks like this is going to start crossing over at one point. We have a little bit of a shaky few days, obviously, within the mix. It's not going to be continuous, just straight upside. But in essence, I believe this downside in terms of 5-year chart will be short-lived and head up to the 200-day moving average ultimately, which is sitting at $5.02, give or take, right? Now, with the one-year chart also, you could argue because we bounced off 50-day moving average, we could be heading to the 100-day moving average, and that's sitting at $4.08, right? So it's not going to be a clear jump to the $5. There's going to be obviously some choppy sides, like in the low. There's a lot of resistance at the low $4 price point, but nonetheless, I still think we're heading to the $5 either way, relatively soon, give or take. How soon, it's debatable though. It's hard to get a clear answer, obviously. But if you look at the alt chart, MACD line basically potentially could have been arching down, but it's pretty much getting bumped back up to the upside with volume coming in more on the buy side, and then heading up to these resistance levels of the 50-day and 100-day moving average. First, the 50-day moving average for the alt chart is at $5.35, and then the next one is on the 100-day moving average at $6.81. Personally, that $6.81 might take a little bit of time, so I'm thinking most likely we're just heading back to the resistance that we've seen earlier prior, where we were in the $5 price point. Now, we did get to $6 as well. I believe it was $6.30, but we need a good amount of foundation in terms of news, all stuff, which we could be having, for example, BlackBerry Investors Day before earnings coming out as well, or like an investor event as well, besides the May 22nd CIBC. So that could be helpful with potential additional great news, so on and so forth. Plus, if earnings is phenomenal, then obviously we'll break through these level barriers. But for the time being, besides obviously the $4 price points in terms of resistance, I'm expecting the low mid-range $5 to kind of keep us hold, but essentially get there relatively soon, in my opinion, given the positive momentum, plus the markets as well. It looks like trade talks are progressing in a positive way, so that could carry as well. Now, if you've owned BlackBerry stock, you've known that even if the market is up, doesn't necessarily mean that BlackBerry will go up as well. But that is definitely helpful, because at least it's not the other way around where the market's getting dragged down and BlackBerry could easily get dragged down regardless of news or not, right? So there's that fact. But again, the 50-day moving average for the alt chart is 535. And then the 5-year chart, I believe, we're basically heading to 200-day moving average, which is $5.02. So in essence, MACD lines are pretty good overall, besides the 1 year. But actually, not besides 1 year. The 1 year, the one issue about the 1 year is the volume uptick right now is more on the sell side. But we could be seeing it reversing because it looks like it bounced off the 50-day moving average on the 1 year chart. Now, in terms of the press release for the share buyback in further details, so again, on May 8th, 2025, BlackBerry announced that it has received acceptance from the Toronto Stock Exchange, so TSX, for a normal course issuer bid NCIB share buyback program. The program allows for the repurchase of up to 27.8 million, so pretty close to 28 million, of its common shares, representing approximately 4.7% of outstanding public float as of close of business on May 5th, 2025. Under the NCIB, BlackBerry can purchase its common shares through TSX, other Canadian stock exchanges, the New York Stock Exchange, the NYSE, and other alternative trading systems in Canada and the US or United States. Subject to regulatory approval, purchases of its common shares may also be made by BlackBerry by way of private agreements or share repurchase programs under issuer bid exemption order issues by security regulatory authorities, and BlackBerry common shares purchased through the NCIB will be canceled. By the way, I will summarize this in terms of high level shortly, probably in about 40 seconds. Just going to go through the details in case you guys want the specific stuff. So in terms of full press release. So then as of the close on business May 5th, 2025, BlackBerry had about 597 million or 598, give or take, between that, but it's more closer to 597 million common shares outstanding, and the public float was about 596 million, give or take, a little bit higher than that, common shares. The average daily trade volume on the TSX for the 6-month ending April 30th, 2025 was 2.8 million, around that ballpark common shares. Daily purchase through the TSX will be limited to 721,194 common shares. Other than block purchases, in the past 12 months, BlackBerry has not repurchased any of its outstanding securities, which leads me to one point before I continue on the other thing. Regardless if they don't buy shares, I hope they do buy shares because, in my opinion, I think the stock is undervalued. And they've communicated that as well before in the past, multiple times. And they've stated that they're going to potentially, could be buying back shares in terms of how positive, in terms of cash flow they are for the time being, and the cash is coming in, plus 2026, they're expecting to be more cash flow positive. All this stuff have over, I can't remember the exact number, but over $400 million in cash. This shows how strong the company is versus previously in the past, right? So this is moving in a good direction overall. And as long as they keep progressing overall, the share price should be representing the value of the company in terms of future growth, right? Now, as long as the momentum keeps rolling. If it's stationary, unfortunately, then the stock won't see much growth. That's the downfall too, right? In terms of the market representation. So the NCIB will commence on May 12th, 2025. So that's one thing, which is basically on May 12th, so it hasn't happened yet. They could be able to buy shares, and will terminate on the earliest May 11th, 2026. So essentially, basically almost a full year. Such date as BlackBerry may determine, and the date of which the maximum number of common shares that may be purchased under the NCIB has been reached by BlackBerry. The purchase price of any common share purchased by BlackBerry under the NCIB will be the market price at the time of acquisition. The purchase price of any common shares purchased by BlackBerry under issuer bid exemption orders issued by securities regulatory authorities will be determined through negotiations with arm's length third parties and is expected to be at a discount to or around the market price. BlackBerry delivered on its commitment to strengthen its balance sheets in fiscal year 2025. Basically, it's just the rest is a summary, I believe. For the okay, cool. I'll read it just in case. So, is it in the fiscal year 2025 and is expected to generate further positive operating cash flow during the fiscal year 2026. That BlackBerry believes that from time to time, the market price of its common shares may not fully reflect the underlying value of its business and its future prospects. In such circumstances, the purchase by BlackBerry of its common shares may represent appropriate use of available funds, since a portion of BlackBerry's excess cash can be invested for an attractive risk-adjusted return of capital through the NCIB. Common shares purchases under the NCIB will also help to offset the dilutive effect of common shares issued under BlackBerry's equity incentive plan. And then also having an NCIB in place at this time will provide BlackBerry with flexibility to purchase its common shares for cancellation where this aligns with its investment and capital allocation strategies. BlackBerry does not expect that any decision to allocate cash to purchase its common shares will affect its long-term strategy. The actual number of common shares that will be purchased under the NCIB and the timing of any purchases will be determined by BlackBerry, subject to the limits imposed by TSX, NYSE, New York Stock Exchange, and the applicable securities laws in Canada and the United States. There cannot be any assurance as to how many common shares, if any, will ultimately be purchased by BlackBerry under the NCIB. So in summary, they're allowed to buy in 1 year time frame starting May 12th, 2025, almost about 20 million shares. And with this whole entire setup, they're pretty much saying that it won't affect their future in a negative way. If anything, it'll affect in a positive way. And at the same time, this doesn't guarantee that they will buy back shares. It just leaves basically the door open to potentially buy shares. I think this is great because at the same time, there are times that the stock price does get hit substantially. I'm expecting them to buy some shares personally in the early phases right now, given the price we're at right now. And for example, the reason why I said this is great in terms of the stock gets hit, we've seen sometimes where it goes down to like the high $2 recently, and then the low $3, right? Essentially low $3 actually recently, right? But then before it was like $2.50. You would want to see them use that capital in terms of cash to buy back shares. And then in essence, they could sell in the future and all that stuff and still make a profit nonetheless. So that is beneficial for the company. But for the time being, I think the stock is undervalued. I'm expecting them to buy back shares anyway, regardless. Not a massive amount, not the whole 28 million, but something small, and give or take. And then later on, if we see that for example, the revenue is climbing substantially with them maintaining the profits and the stock is still undervalued, I could see them buying shares here and there, give or take. It just depends on the strategy that they're going to approach and if they want to use that cash for mergers or acquisitions, which they also mentioned as a possibility as well. They mentioned 3 possibilities in total. One of them was share buyback, which was mentioned a bunch of times. In terms of merger acquisitions, it was mentioned, but more so later down the line if they see something worthwhile. And then the third one, which it was nice that they mentioned it, but I don't think that they're going to do it. And I personally don't really want them to do it, even though I do own shares in the company and it would be beneficial for me in terms of financial side, is they mentioned dividends, right? Potentially, possibly dividends. In terms of the stock, I personally don't want the dividends to happen because I don't think that would be beneficial for the company in terms of long term, just handing out cash. But owning shares, it would be nice. But again, in terms of the company, I don't want that route. I just like that it was mentioned as a possibility to show how strong the company is and how positive they're thinking the company will grow over time and the confidence boost internally, right? So that is beneficial overall. But that's basically it for today's video. Thanks again for watching. I appreciate it. If you want to be notified when I do upload my next video or live stream, consider following and subscribing. If you found the video beneficial, consider dropping a like. It does help the channel. So thank you so much for that. Appreciate it. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care. God bless and peace.